It is 1935. Although the Zionist movement has split, with Vladimir Jabotinsky founding the new Zionist organization, David Ben-Gurion has achieved the seemingly impossible goals he has set for himself. In Palestine, he heads a united Labour Party. He is chairman of the Zionist Executive, World Zionism's supreme political body. And he leads the Jewish agency, primarily responsible for immigration and settlement in Palestine. Yet, despite holding concentrated authority, Ben-Gurion will confront a series of intractable problems in the coming decade, forming a Gordian knot impossible to untie. They threaten to turn the Zionist dream to dust. Ben-Gurion is quick to understand the greatest threat. In 1933, the year Hitler assumes power, Ben-Gurion told the Zionist Congress,
"Hitler's rule places the entire Jewish people in jeopardy. His regime cannot continue long without war. What will be our strength and weight in Palestine on the awful judgment day when the great catastrophe bursts upon the world?"
Jewish refugees from Hitler pour into Palestine. In 1935, an unprecedented 65,000 Jews arrive, more than in the previous 12 years combined. Ben-Gurion proposes a worldwide campaign to demand Britain assist in the immigration and absorption of 1 million Jews. But growing Jewish immigration prompts the Arabs to revolt in April 1936. They declare a general strike. Armed bands roam the country killing Jews. Ben-Gurion insists on a policy of havlagah, or self-restraint, in the face of Arab attacks. Ben-Gurion biographer Michael Bar-Zohar writes,
"There was one basic assumption from which he did not budge. The Jewish community must not come into conflict with Britain. Britain was the only force capable of helping the Jewish community by continuing the active implementation of the national home policy. Thus, it was incumbent upon the Jewish community to do everything in its power to preserve British sympathy."
Despite havlagah, Ben-Gurion's fears are soon realized. As it had done in 1921 and 1929 in response to Arab violence, Britain establishes a royal commission, this one led by Lord Peel. While Chaim Weizmann gives a powerful public speech before the Royal Commission, in the rest of his testimony given privately or in camera, he is vague on immigration. Bar-Zohar writes,
Ben-Gurion's fury was justified. In one blow, Weizmann had disavowed all the plans for a large-scale immigration and the creation of a Jewish majority.
Ben-Gurion will remain torn between admiration and fury at Weizmann, as historian Shabtai Tevet writes.
In Ben-Gurion's mind, Weizmann was in a class by himself, tall and spellbinding. No one Jew or Gentile could resist his deportment and charm, wisdom and unparalleled sense of humor.
But Ben-Gurion is now convinced Weizmann cannot be trusted in negotiations and tries to monitor him. Bar-Zohar observes,
Weizmann himself was vividly aware of the unpleasant fact that everyone was attempting to watch him. He said bitterly, they chose a leader and they don't want to let him lead. Instead, they want to lead him.
But it soon becomes clear that what any Jewish leader says is of no consequence. War with the Nazis looms, and Britain is more concerned with securing the support of Middle East Arabs and India's Muslims than fulfilling its commitments to the Jews. In May 1939, Britain caves to Arab demands. The British issue a white paper that limits Jewish immigration to 75,000 over 5 years, after which further immigration would be subject to Arab consent. The Gordian knot is tightening. As Ben-Gurion says,
"They've got us locked up and silenced. It is inconceivable that the Jews will be on Hitler's side. Not so the Arabs. They have to be bought because they can afford to be on Hitler's side."
Ben-Gurion at first breathes fire at British policy. He proposes civil disobedience and even speaks of war with Britain. But when Britain and France declare war on Germany on September 3, 1939, Ben-Gurion comes up with a famous formula.
"We must help the British in their war against Hitler as though there were no white paper, and we must resist the white paper as though there were no war."
In practice, the focus is on the war against Hitler. When Ben-Gurion issues a call to arms, 130,000 Jewish men and women descend on recruiting centers. Ben-Gurion's war against the White Paper settles down into speeches and resolutions. He predicts that a Jewish state will emerge as part of post-war reconstruction. In May 1942 in New York City, Ben-Gurion addresses the Pan-American Zionist Conference, better known as the Biltmore Conference. Delegates affirm unalterable rejection of the White Paper, demand that the Jewish Agency be given control of immigration, and that Palestine be established as a Jewish Commonwealth. But as knowledge of the Holocaust reaches the outside world, Ben-Gurion begins to lose hope that the catastrophe of Nazism, like earlier setbacks, can develop into something potentially positive for Zionism. He tells the Jewish Agency Executive,
The extermination of European Jewry means the end of Zionism, for there will be no one to build Palestine.
By 1943, Ben-Gurion has regained his optimism, telling the Mapai Central Committee in December that the disaster would foster sympathy for the Jews.
The Zionist case rests not merely on the reality we have created here thus far, but also on the reality of the Jewish catastrophe. The world must be made to see this.
Still clinging to the hope that Britain will change its policy after the war, Ben-Gurion in 1944 calls upon the Yishuv to turn members of the underground Irgun over to the British.
The Jewish community is called upon to spew forth all the members of this harmful, destructive gang, to wipe out the organization, for this is a matter of life or death.
Ben-Gurion will prove to be mistaken about a change in British policy after the war. But with the Nazis destroyed, the Gordian knot is untied. In the aftermath of the Holocaust, there is world sympathy for establishing a Jewish state. Now only the British stand in the way.